Good evening, team. Welcome to today's session. So we're going to continue from where we left in our last session, and we were still talking about games. So today we're going to continue talking about games, so that we're able to understand a few things, to learn more about a few things that we can be able to do with gaming in Scratch. So specifically today we're going to talk about two main things. One, we're going to talk about the levels, how to add levels in your game so that you make your game more interesting and keep your players interested and to want to keep playing your game. And then we're going to look at different data, that is variables and listing. So we're going to look at how we can be able to use variables and lists to be able to create different levels, or how to create different levels in games using the different data variables and data lists. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the session. Feel free to introduce yourself and ask as many questions as you can. And yeah, that's it. So before we continue, we're going to look at the SDGs once again. I'm always urging you or requesting you, once you're trying to solve a problem, once you want to come up with that story, once you want to come up with that game, once you want to create anything using Scratch or your project that you're thinking of, the problem that you want to solve, if you're going to focus it on these 17 goals, your project is going to have more weight, more value, and it's going to be very easy to implement it in the society or in the community or in the country or in the whole world, because these are some of the main areas that you can be able to solve problems and be able to help achieve the different visions that we have in the country and in the world. So if you focus your problem, if you focus your idea, if you focus what you're going through or what you want to try solve, what you want to bring it out, and to fall under any of these goals, your project is going to be able to move further or be able to have more impact in the society. So I'll always urge you to look at that. So we said we're going to look at two main things, that is how to create levels in games, how to be able to make your game have more levels, and we're going to do that using the variables and the listing. So in our previous session, we were able to look at different variables. We were able to create a variable. So today we're going to continue with that. And as you can see, I've outlined an example of a variable that we have created, and we're going to see how I did that. And then how can we be able to manipulate our different variables? And as we've been able to see that we can be able to set our variables into a specific value. We can be able to change it the way we want. And at the same time, we can be able to show or hide that variable if we don't want it to be visible. So always remember that the variables are what we use to be able to hold values or strings. When you talk about strings, you're talking about things like wordings, letters, all that. But when you talk of values, we're talking about things in terms of numbers or integers. So a variable can be able to hold either a value or a string. And then one thing I want to also to know about variable is that variables hold only one item at a time. It can only be able to hold one thing at a time, which gives us now the advantage of having the data lists, because in a list you can be able to hold more than one item at the same time. So that's the main difference. For a variable, you only hold one item at a time, and it can hold either a value or a string. Same thing to a list, it can hold either values or strings, but for lists, they're able to hold more than one item at the same time. So that's important. And then as we know, in the Scratch structure, both the variables and the list, they are found under the category of variables blocks, which are orange in color, but they are different because one is a bit dark in color than the other one, so you're able to distinguish between the lists and the variables when you're using the different blocks. And the good thing is you have the ability to create your own blocks, your own list or your own variable, and be able to use it or manipulate it. So we're going to look at that in the Scratch world. So we say today we're going to look at how to add levels and then how to use your list and variables to be able to make that happen. So in today's example or activity that we're going to look at an activity that is going to have two main levels. The first level, once you successfully complete the first level, you're able to go to the second level. So in my example that I've prepared for you, that we're going to look at today, we're going to look at an example of a maze where we can be able to move around, find our way out in a maze. And then once we do that successfully, we are able to move to the next level, which is a more complicated maze, and you're supposed to navigate through it, avoiding the different challenges that have been put on the path on your maze. So that's one thing that we're going to look at. So the example we have is going to have two levels. So I want to show you how you can navigate, be able to add levels in your game. And we're going to do that using the variables listing to be able to accomplish that. So we're going to use the examples that are familiar to us, and I'm going to use this healthy maze that we've been looking at to be able to move from one level to the next level. So that's it. So feel free to ask questions and let us know where you're having challenges so that we can help you be able to solve that. So from the Scratch side, we have the Scratch interface. So I'm going to demonstrate how to add the different levels or how to be able to move from one level to the other in your game. And I'm just going to open a new Scratch project, and then I'm going to delete this sprite so that we have an empty environment. So once we have that, I'm going to add the different mazes that we're going to use, and I'm going to add them as a backdrop. So I'm going to click on the stage side, and then I'm going to say upload a backdrop. So that's what I'm going to do. But remember, you can decide to use them as your sprites. I can upload it as a sprite, or I can be able to upload it as a backdrop. So it's up to you to find what you find easy to manipulate, or which side favors you most, and then you can be able to use it. So I'm going to upload my maze as a stage or a backdrop. So I'm going to click on backdrops, then upload a backdrop. So it's going to give me the opportunity to choose from my computer, and I'm going to upload the first one, this one, which is the first level, which is a bit simpler. And then I'm going to upload my second maze, which will be used for level 2. So I'm calling it level 2. So here it is. So I have now a plain background. I have the first level, which is a maze, and I have the second level, which is also a maze. But as you can see, these are different mazes. So we can be able to work on a background so that it doesn't appear white. We can change that so that it's more visible and clear to the players. So I can be able to, I click on a rectangle, and then I add a rectangle to my background. Then I need the rectangle to be behind the maze so that it does not obstruct it or hide it. So I'm going to push it backwards until I have my maze. So I can reduce the color so that it appears easier or it appears visible to the user. So I can have something like that, which is a bit brighter. Yes. So as you can see, it has changed immediately. So I'm going to go to my second maze so that I make sure they are all in the right position, so that once I'm using them, I don't want to be coming back and working on them. So for this one, we need to make it a bit bigger so that it fits on the. So I'm going to click on select, and then I'm going to select the maze. And then I'm going to make it bigger using these side arrows so that it fits on my stage. I want it to fit very well so that I do not have issues working on it. Yeah, so I can make it as big as I want. Yeah, like that. So at least it fits on the stage that we are working on. So that's it. So once I click it, yeah. Yes, so that's it. So we have them in the right way, the way I want it. So for the second one, I don't want to have a color on it, so I'll just leave it like that. And then for the first one, I'll put just a color like that. So you can even add a color on this other one if you want, but for now, let's have it just like that, because the first one we changed the color. So now I'm going to go to the code, and then I'm going to tell, I want this backdrop that we are seeing right now to be the first level of our game, and then the second one, this one that we are looking at right now. So let me make it visible. So this one, so we want this one to be our second level. So I have to tell which one will come first. So this is the one that we want to be level 1, and then the second one, this is what we want to be level 2, because it's a bit more complicated. So we have to instruct it using our blocks. We have to code it and instruct it that which one appears first and which one follows the other one. So because this is what I want to have as my first level, so I'm going to use an event and instruct it that once I click on the flag, I want this level to appear. So I'm gonna tell it, I want it to switch to this backdrop, which in our case, it's backdrop called level 1. So here is the name, the costume is called level 1. So I just come here in the backdrop and I choose level 1 because that's what I want to work with. So I'm instructing, let me make it visible. So I'm instructing my backdrop such that once I click the flag, I should be able to see level 1, and then it should wait until I give it the next instruction. So for now, I'm going to tell it to switch to that backdrop and then wait for the next instruction. So the next thing we need to do is to add our character, or the character we're going to use to play the game. So I'm going to choose a sprite. So I come on sprites and then choose a sprite. You can be able to upload your own sprite or draw your own sprite. So I'm going to use the cat, which is easier and simpler. So we have to make the cat be in a size that fits is able to walk through the puzzle or the maze. So we have to manipulate the cat to be in the right size and to be able to move. So how do we do that? We need to give our cat some coding instructions using the blocks. So I'm going to start the event again. So once I click the flag, when I click the flag, that's when my game starts. So once I click the flag, I want the cat to be standing. Where do we want to start our maze? So we can add another sprite to give direction or to act as a symbol on where do we want to start the game? So I can use the arrow to be able to give directions. So I have two sprites, the arrow and the cat. So you're going to use the arrow to tell the cat where to start the maze from, and then we can also use another sprite to tell the cat this is the end of that is the end of the puzzle, or they've been able to get to the end. So we can use a letter, maybe letter E. Yes, to symbolize the end of the puzzle. So we need to put all these sprites in the right position so that we can be able to work on our sprite. So we can start with the arrow. So we go to the costumes and we get an arrow. So we want the arrow to be, maybe we want to start from this position. So we have to put the arrow here and tell it this is the beginning point, or the starting of the maze. So we can even change the outline, the color of the arrow. If you find that color not attractive, you can always work on it and try to change it, make it the way you want. So just look at it and then pick what you find favorable for yourself. So I'm going to use this arrow to give instructions. So I'm going to tell it when the flag is clicked, that is the event. We say the event blocks are used to trigger action. So I want it to point in the left direction because we are moving towards the left. So we go to motion and then we tell it to point in the specific direction, which is left. So left is -90. And then I'm going to give it a size, so that goes under looks. So I can reduce it to around 40%. And then I can even dictate the specific position that I want it to be standing once the game is starting. So for the position, you read the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. So you specify that on the motion. So we tell it to go to a specific X and Y position, as you can read from here, based on where that specific sprite is positioned. So once I click on the flag, I'm able to see that my arrow gets smaller, fits in the area, and then it's able to point in the left to show that that's where you're supposed to start. So it can even say that, tell the cat tell the cat that this is the starting point. So it says this is the starting point. So you start from here and shows the direction. So we need to do the same to the ending position. So where will the puzzle end from? So we need to dictate that and tell the cat where it ends the game. So I'm going to duplicate this code and put it the same, copy it to the ending letter, which is letter E we are using to mark the end. But this time I want the end to be, this is the exit. So we position our letter on this position. So we need to read this position. So I'm going to pick this position and read the current position, which our X is 202 and our Y is -78. So once I click on the flag, as you can see, the letter is on this position that we specified, but it's facing on the left. So we can change the direction so that it does not alter the direction. So that we just left to the with the letter facing in the right direction. So we need to position it well. So I'm going to change the X and the Y values so that this goes to 191 and then this one goes to -94 as it's the current position right now. So that's it. So we have the start and the end point. So we need to do the same to the cat. We need to tell the cat to come and stand in this position so that it's able to get the right position. So I'm going to duplicate the code again. So you pick the code, drag it and drop on the cat so that it picks the same thing. But now I don't want the cat to, as you can see, the cat is upside down. So we need to make it straight. So we go to direction and tell it to turn using the left and right direction. So it's facing that way. So we need to change the position of the cat. So we can put it there. So that we read that direction to be 190. And then this is 129 negative. So we click on that. Then we don't want it to say start point. We just want it to be that way. So I can reduce the size so that the cat is able to fit in the maze. So we need to work on the size. 5% so that they all fit. So as you can see, once I click on the green flag, everybody goes to their position and the cat is told to move, where to start. So we need to give the instruction on how the cat can move, and we're going to do that using the control blocks. So I'm going to pick a forever block so that the movement is continuous. That's why we're using the forever block, because we expect the cat to move forever until they are done with the puzzle. And then we have to use the if statements to be able to dictate how they're going to move. How are you going to make your movement? So I'm going to use the sensing block to put it inside the if statement so that we get a statement. The if evaluates if the statement is true. So how do we want the movement to be? We want the cat to be able to move forward, backwards, up and down. So I'm going to use the sensing key to be able to put the different keys in the keyboard to be able to dictate our direction. So for moving up, we're going to use the up arrow, and then we tell it once the up arrow is clicked, what happens? They should be able to move, make some steps, and at the same time, we dictate to which direction do you want us to move? Is it forward or is it backwards? Is it up or down? So if I put 90, it means it's moving towards the right, but I want it to be able to move up. So up should be 0. And then I'm going to reduce the number of steps so that it's easy for the cat to move. And then because we need to move up, down, left, right, I'm going to duplicate this statement so that I can be able to use it for up. So I'm changing this to down, and then I change the direction. Down should be 180. So I duplicate this again. I use it for left. So let's start with right. Then I change the direction. So right should be positive 90 degrees. And then I duplicate again and then be able to use it to move to the left. So using the left arrow, and then I change the direction. Left should be negative 90. So with that, our cat should be able to move up, down, right, and left, which is forward and backwards, making 3 move steps and in different directions as we've dictated. So we can try say that if that is possible. So I'm going to click on the arrows. So I'm going to click the green flag to start the game, and then I'm going to press the arrows. So I'm pressing the left arrow and the cat is able to move forward. I press up, it's able to move up. I press left again, down, then left again. So can it go right? Yes, using the right arrow. So it's able to move towards the right direction. So the movement is okay using these code blocks that we'll be able to use. Now, because it's a game, we have to put a challenge. So we can put a challenge such that once the cat touches the line, any of these lines that are marking the boundaries, the cat is pushed back to the starting point so that they can start the challenge once again. So I'm going to do that using another if statement, so that I give an instruction such that using the sensing blocks this time again. So I tell the cat, if the cat touches the lines, and our lines are in which color? They're in black, so we need to give that specific color. So we tell our cat, once they touch these black lines, they're going to be pushed to the starting point again. So it's a challenge we add into our game. So once you touch the black line, what happens to you? You're pushed back to the starting point using the motion blocks. So we need to know the position of the starting point, and as we had dictated it here, so we're going to copy this, the 190 and negative 129. So I'm going to put 190 here and then negative 129. So every time the cat touches the black line, even if they were almost at the end of the game, they're going to be pushed back to start the game again. So that's a challenge we're putting because it's a game. So we have to put the challenge to make it interesting. And then you can also add some sounds such that it makes some sound to show disappointment. And then it's pushed now to the starting point. So we can try that and see if it's possible. So I'm going to click the flag so that we start again. So I'm going to push the cat line. So once it touches the line, it's back to it's pushed back to the beginning of the game to begin again. So if I push up, if I go up and touch the line, I'm pushed to the start point. So it's a challenge we've been able to add again. So every time the cat touches that line, they are pushed back to the starting point. So that's it. So now we want to go to our main point, which was creating the different levels and to be able to switch from one level to the other once they're able to complete this challenge. So how do we do that? First, we have to create a variable. So we go to variables, then make a variable. Then we're able to create our variable, which in this case, we want to add the levels. So we put the level. And then when you're creating the variables or the list, you have the ability to choose if you want that variable to be for a specific sprite or for all sprites. So when you're using it for all sprites, we say that that variable is global. It can be used, it can be accessed by every sprite and backdrop in that game. But if we put it for a specific sprite, it means it is only usable in that sprite that we've specified. So always check on that. Make sure you use it for all if you want it to be visible to all the sprites and to be used by all the sprites. Otherwise, if you put for a specific sprite only, it will be limited to that sprite only. So we've created our variable called level, and as you can see in our game, we have it here. So it's showing level, and by default it comes to 0. But once we play the game, we're gonna increase the levels. So at some point you're going to change. So if you want your game every time you start, it starts from level 0. You can be able to set that. So we can come here where we've said when the green flag is clicked. So we can tell it to set the level, our variable, which is level, to 0. So every time I'm going to click the green flag, the level will be reading as 0. Even if I was in level 5, it will take me back to level 0 because that's how I've dictated it. If you want it to continue, then you just don't set it to 0. It should be able to continue from where you are. Then you can be able to hide this variable if you want it, that by just removing this tick. So once you untick the level, the variable is able to, it's hidden, you cannot see it. And then you have to tell it to show using the show variable once you want it to appear. Otherwise, you can also tell it to hide, as we've instructed it to hide right now because it's not ticked. But for us, we want it to be visible so that you can be able to see it and see the levels changing. So we've set our level to 0. And then the next thing, we need to introduce the next level. So once we've been able to move, once the cat has been able to navigate through the puzzle, find its way out and get to this letter E. So we're going to tell letter E. So let's go to our letter E. So we're going to tell it once it comes into contact with the letter E, it should show that the game is over. So we're going to come to letter E, and then we can tell it using the control that, so we can give the instruction in the sprite cat or in letter E. So let's give it in the cat, that is a bit easier. So we're going to tell the cat once it reaches to letter E, so we use the if statement again. So if it comes in contact using the sensors, if you touch our sprite, which is glow E, so if it touches glow E, then it should broadcast a message to show that it has come to an end. So the broadcast messages, if you remember, we used them during creating the stories. So we're going to broadcast a message called end level 1 and say okay. Then we can even maybe say something like I did it, like maybe yes, I did it. Yes, I did it. Remember, it's a game. It must have the fun bit of it. Once you achieve something, you get the rewards. So once this cat is able to get to the letter E, it should be able to go to the next level. So we're broadcasting a message called end level 1. So we're going to use this broadcast to be able to move to the next level. So first we'll go to our backdrop. So I'll go to stage and click on the backdrop. And then I'm going to tell the backdrop such that I'm going to give it an instruction using the code and tell it when they receive the message that level 1 is over, or the cat has been able to end level 1, they switch to the next backdrop, in our case, which should be level 2, our maze number level 2. So then once we switch to that, we need to change our level. Because we set our level to 0, we need to increment our level so that once it goes to that side, it changes to level 2. So we go back to this, and then using the variable, so when we receive end level 1, we switch our backdrop to level 2 of the game, and then we change the variable level by 1 so that it increases from level 0 to level 1. So that's it. And then we can call our level, instead of calling it level 0 the way we are calling it here, we can call it level 1. So how do we change that? We change that by, once the flag is clicked, we want it to be set to 0, and at the same time we want it to change to be level 1. So how do we do that? So we need to increment our where we set it to 0. So we said once the flag is clicked, we set level to 0. So we don't want it to be 0. We want to call it level 1 because it is our first level. So this should be level 1. So that once we complete level 1, we are able to go to level 2. And how do we get that? Because we've added here that we change the level by 1. So it will increase. It will keep increasing by 1 by 1 by 1. So We can try do that, see if our levels are going to change. So I'm going to try to move the cat around the game in the black lines. So I've touched that line, so I'm going to try again. Oops. Okay, so I'm trying to move the cat round so that we see if we're going to get. So my sprite is quite big. That's why it cannot navigate through this space. So I can either change the lines in the backdrop, or I can reduce the size of my sprite so that it fits in my maze. So I can change it from 25 to 20%. Then we try play the game again. So I'll click the green flag to start. So I'm going to move. Try navigate without touching the black line. Yeah, so I did it this time. So I'm trying to move round. So I have to be very careful so that I'm able to get to the end. That is the conflict. Remember when we were talking about the elements of a game, we talked about the conflicts that you have to create in your game, so that you want the goal to be achieved, but you're trying to put some challenges so that it's not easy to achieve it. I'm trying to find the shortest route possible, be able to get to the end without touching the black line. So we're talking about conflict. So we said you have to balance so that you don't have unmanageable challenges that such that your players give up in playing the game because it's too hard. Did I just touch that line when I was almost finishing? So that you ensure that it's not too hard for your players such that they give up. Always try balance the challenge and the rewards so that the game is interesting and at the same time it has challenges. So I'm trying to reach to the end so that we see if the level is going to change as we've instructed it in our code. Reaches the end. I'm avoiding not to run so fast so that I don't touch those lines, because they're going to take me to the end, to the beginning again. Let's try this the last time. So feel free to ask questions if you're not getting the concept on the levels and creating the variables so that you're able to help you understand it better. Or any other question, if you're having a challenge with your project, anything you're trying to do in Scratch, just ask and we're going to be able to help you out. Okay, so I have to be very careful here so that I don't touch the line because I'm almost at the end. So as you can see, we were able to change the level And because I'm still touching the letter E, that's why it keeps increasing the level. So that is an error. We need to debug it so that it does not keep increasing the levels, yet we are still in level 2. So that's one thing I wanted us to observe, that you can be able to change the levels by using the change and setting the different blocks, setting the levels to change the way you want. Do you want it to change by 1? Do you want it to change by, you can even put it to change by 4. So it's up to you based on the challenge you're trying to create or the continuity that you want to face. So we change level by 1, we switch to unchanged level by 1. So I'm going to bring that change to here from the backdrop so that we bring it here. So we try to debug it so that it only changes once it touches the letter E, only once. So how do we do that? So if it touches glow, then change level by 1 and stop. So we can be able to control it. So we can be able to tell it to stop. So let's go back to variable, then we tell it change level by 1. So then we remove this one. And then it should be able to stop once it switches the level so that we only have one, it changes once at a time so that there's no continuous repetition. So once we touch E, we broadcast this and then we change level by 1. So that's it. So that's how you're able to change the levels using the variables. So yeah, so if we, please ask questions if you have any questions or any concerns so that we can be able to help you solve them out. Otherwise, so we are doing good, and that's how we're able to change the levels. So you create your own variable, then you manipulate how you want the levels to change. Is it once you get to the end? Is it once you collect maybe a specific number of scores that you want your players to be able to score? So once they reach, if the target was to be able to collect maybe 50 items, once you reach 50, that's when you change the level. So you give the condition, if you use the if to give the condition on when do you want the level to change. So in our case, we want the level to change once the card touches the letter E. And then that's it. So that's how in our game we were able to change. Then as you can see in the next level, the starting point and the end points are quite different. So we need to change our sprites so that they shift the directions, they go to the necessary position. So this time we can decide to start up here, so we can move the arrow up and then we change it so that this becomes the starting point and this becomes the ending point. And then we can also decide to use another sprite to be able to mark the ending point this time instead of using the letter E. So we can try another letter, maybe N, to represent END, end. So we're going to duplicate this code, copy it and drag it and drop it on letter N so that we have the same here. But this time we want N not to show when the flag is clicked. So we only want N to show when they receive the message, when I receive end of level 1. So when level 1 is over, N shows, and then we need to give N a position. So I can put N here. So because this is the end point, and then we said the starting point can be up here. So we need to read that direction, which is X 134, 134. And then for Y, it's negative 177. So when it receives that the level 1 is over, it's able now to go to that specific position. So that this time we tell the cat if they come into contact with letter N, it now changes to another level if we have another level. So then for letter E, we need to tell letter E once they receive the message that level 1 is over, they need to hide. We don't want to see them anymore. So we need to tell them to hide. So once you tell an element to hide, it's always important to tell it to show so that it does not hide forever. So it's going to hide once we move to the next level, which is level 2, but it's going to show once the flag is clicked. So that's how we want it. Then for our arrow, we want the arrow to be able to go up here. So I'm going to duplicate this code. Right click on the code and then duplicate it so that we have 2 of them. But this time I want the arrow to be up here, but pointing downwards. So we need to change the costume. So we look at the arrows. We need this one that is pointing down to show the starting point, which is arrow C. This is the name of the costume. So I'm going to tell it to switch costume and go to arrow C. But this time it is not when the flag is clicked, it is when they receive that the message end of level 1. So they're going to switch the costume, and then we don't need to tell it to point in the which direction because the costume already shows the direction. And then we need to specify this position so that it points to -83, and then Y value, which is here, is 153, 153. 153, like that. So, and then it tells it that this is the new starting point. So once I click on this, it should be able to point. Which costume did we pick? There's arrow C. So it should be able to point downwards. It's still pointing up, so we need to look at direction and make sure it's pointing down. Yes. Using the left-right direction, sorry, I was using the rotate, that's why it was rotating. So it's arrow C pointing down. So that should happen. So once we get to this level, letter E should hide, and then we need to tell our cat to move to this position. So we need to go to the cat and now tell the cat when it receives that's the end of level 1, it needs to go to that position, the new starting position. So we can tell it this time to glide. Instead of go to, we tell it to glide to our new position, which should be up there with the sprite here. So we tell it to go to position -78x and Y should be 167. So that's what should happen to those two. So we can try, have a demo to our game. Oh, we need to hide letter N when the flag is clicked. So how do we do that? So we tell it once the flag is clicked, letter N should hide so that we don't see it. We only see it when we're in the next level, which is level 2. But then remember we said when we hide an item, we need to tell it to show. Otherwise it will not show when it's time, when it's needed to show up. So once I click the flag, we should be able to go to our first level and then be able to start the game again. So my arrow is misbehaving. There's an error, we need to debug it. So we need to tell the arrow, where is the arrow? When the flag is clicked, point in direction. Oh, we tell it to switch back the costume. So we need to go to costumes. Then we tell it to switch to costume. Which was our costume? A, the arrow A. So we tell it to go to arrow A and then point in that direction, -90. So we can even get rid of this direction, and then we use the arrow that points in that direction, which is arrow B, that one. So I'm going to change costume to arrow B and then put that. So I'm going to remove the direction as I put it. So that it is effective. Yes, so as you can see, it's effective. So that's it. So when I click on this, it should be able to go up there. Yes, when I click on this, it should be able to go there. So that's it. So we're able to have the different items on the different places that we want in our game. And then once we start, that's it. And then we're able to change now the levels as we wanted them to change. So thank you so much. So before I finish up, let me add one little thing. Into our game. So we can add such that we can create what we call a list, and then we can have a sprite go collecting different items and adding them in our list. So I'm just going to add 2 items. Maybe I'm going to add an apple and a banana in our list. So I'm going to put them somewhere, position them somewhere on the way, such that when the cat comes around, it's able to pick these items and add them in our list. So how do you do that? The same way we've created a variable, we go to variables and then we click on make a list. Once you click on the make a list, you write your list, you give it a name, so I can call it fruits. And then I say, okay. So I'm going to have a list of fruits. As you can see, my list is here and it is visible. So we're going to collect these fruits and then be able to add them in our list. So how do you do that? So I'm going to click on the sprites that we've added. So I'm going to give them a size. So once we click on them, we change their size. So let me duplicate this code so that it becomes easier. I put it on the banana and then on the apple. Did I copy it? So when the flag is clicked, so go to the banana. So you wait until it checks, that's when you know it's copied. So here it is. So I want it to be in this size, but now the position, I'm going to change the position to be the position of the banana, which is 12 and 115, 115. So when I click on that, it should be able to come here. So I want so I can also duplicate this and put it on the apple. So once I come to the apple, So I'm going to give it a direction where it's standing, which is 99, and then this is negative 77. So when I click on it, it should be that way, yes. So I want if the cat touches, so I'm going to add a code here using the if statement again. So I'm going to tell the cat if they touch, if they touch the apple, yes, so they go to the variable and then they're able to add using the adding block on the variable. So add the apple to my list of fruits. So I choose my list, which is fruits. So I'm going to duplicate this so that we have for an apple and for the banana. So once it touches these two, it's going to add them into our list, and then we can be able to see that. So I'm going to tell the banana, they wait until they are touched by the cat. So wait until the cat touches them. Wait until you touch the cat. And then what happens? I want them to hide. So once they are touched, they hide so that it does not touch them continuously. The same thing to the banana. So the banana should wait until it comes in contact using the sensing with the cat, and then it's able to hide. Hide is on looks. So that's it. So remember, hide goes with show. You have to tell it to show again, otherwise it will disappear forever. So we're going to add these items into our list. So let's try this. So this list is hiding my, so I can be able to move it and put it where I want it. Or I can just tell it to stop showing, and then it will show once we receive the message of the different levels, so that we are able to see it. So we tell it here, once you broadcast the message end level, where was it? So once we receive end level, we show the list. So we come to list and show our list. So let's try collect these fruits. So I'm going to click on the green flag to start. So I want to be very careful this time so that we don't repeat. So try use the variables and the different listing that you've learned today in your projects and see if you can be able to manipulate the levels or be able to collect different items for project. Thank you so much. Touched the banana, it has disappeared. Same thing to the apple. Yes, so you can see our list and we have the apple. Oh, we didn't change the name for the once it duplicated. So apple, so this should be banana. Those are some of the errors. and we've been able to correct that. So you should put the list of both the apple and the banana once we do that again. So that's it for today. So I can be able to continue the game around this other maze, try find my way out. So thank you so much. See you in the next session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.